Qantas has just announced that the world's first non-stop services between Sydney and London will take off in October 2027. This will mark the very first time the Kangaroo Route has ever been flown without stops from Australia's east coast. On that date, the captain and first officer are going to take off from Sydney, fly for several hours, then go to bed, on the plane, while it's still flying. Somewhere behind the galley are hidden bunks that most of the 238 people on board will never even know exist. And by the time the plane lands in London, almost a full day later, the person flying it won't be the same one who took off. Far from being a gimmick, that's the only way that Project Sunrise can actually work. Because here's the thing that nobody tells you about the world's longest flight. The hardest part wasn't building a plane that can stay in the air for 20 hours. Engineers solved that years ago on paper. The hardest part is what happens to a human being, a fuel tank, and a business model when you push them to the absolute limit. And right now, Qantas is finding out for real, because the first aircraft, registration Foxtrot Whiskey Zulu November Kilo, just made its maiden flight on the 2nd of June 2026, and it's already running late. Let's get stuck in. Back in 2017, Qantas did something airlines rarely do. They went to Boeing and Airbus and basically issued an ultimatum. Build us a jet that can fly non-stop from the east coast of Australia to London and New York, or we take one of the biggest aircraft orders in Australian history somewhere else. Boeing offered a revised version of the upcoming 777X, while Airbus came back with a heavily modified A350-1000. Qantas picked Airbus. That was nearly a decade ago. The first of these aircraft, MSN 707, took off from Toulouse on the 2nd of June 2026 for its very first flight. 3 hours and 43 minutes, climbing to 41,000 feet, putting a brand new fuel system through its paces for the first time. Here's the part that might worry you if you're hoping to jump on this aircraft anytime soon. Qantas originally wanted these jets flying customers by late 2026, but Airbus had to redesign the new centre fuel tank after regulators raised concerns during certification. Add in supply chain delays like the global shortage of titanium and composite materials, hitting Airbus's production lines, and the delivery date has now slipped to April 2027. 12 aircraft were ordered, so far only one has flown, with the rest still in various stages of assembly. So the plane works, it's just late. And the reason it took this long to get here comes down to a single piece of maths that has quietly killed more ambitious aviation projects than turbulence, terrorism, and recessions combined. Here it is. If you want a plane to fly further, you can't just pour in more fuel. It sounds obvious, but the consequences maybe are not. Extra fuel weighs more. To carry that weight, you need a stronger airframe. To lift that stronger airframe, you need more fuel. It's a loop that feeds on itself, and the further you push it, the worse it gets. By the time you're aiming for 20 hours non-stop, every additional litre of fuel is buying you less and less extra distance. That is the reason a standard A350-1000, which seats 366 passengers in a typical two-class layout, had to be stripped down to just 238 seats for Project Sunrise. It's not about luxury or about Qantas being generous with legroom. Every seat that disappeared did so because the plane needed the weight allowance for fuel and structural reinforcement instead. The cabin is divided into 4 classes. First, business, premium economy, and economy. But over 40% of the seats are premium, because Qantas needs those higher fare passengers to generate enough revenue to justify carrying a third fewer paying customers than it ordinarily would. Airbus claims this aircraft burns around 25% less fuel per seat than a Boeing 777-300ER on similar long-haul routes. That number is huge. Without that efficiency gain, the whole project doesn't get off the ground, literally. The A350-1000 ULR achieves this through a combination of lightweight composite materials, advanced aerodynamics, and the Trent XWB-97 engines, which are currently among the most efficient in the world. And the obsession with weight goes even further. Every kilogram stripped off this aircraft is worth thousands in fuel savings over a year. So that means lighter trolleys, lighter seat frames. Even the wine list gets reviewed for bottle weight, because running this close to the limits, a heavier bottle of red causes headaches for the engineers more than for the drinkers. Qantas has gone so far as to replace metal cutlery with lightweight composites and reduce the weight of the in-flight magazines. Every gram counts when you're pushing the boundaries of range. Here's a logistics challenge most passengers might never think about. How do you feed 238 people for 20 hours without running out of food, water, or space? On a typical long-haul flight, airlines maybe load one full meal service plus snacks. For Project Sunrise, Qantas is targeting 3 full meal services, so departure, mid-flight and pre-arrival, plus additional light snacks and hydration stations. That means over 700 individual meal components per flight, all prepared, loaded and served in a space no larger than a standard A350 galley. But the real challenge isn't just the quantity, it's the timing. Every service is precisely scheduled to align with the passenger's circadian rhythms. The idea is to trick the body into adjusting to the destination's time zone before landing. So if you're flying Sydney to London, you might get a late dinner after takeoff, a midnight snack served in dim lighting to encourage sleep, and a breakfast before landing, all designed to sync with London time. Then there's the waste. A 20-hour flight generates a lot of rubbish: meal trays, packaging, bottles and more. The A350-1000 ULR has enhanced waste compaction systems to handle the volume, but even then, the crew needs to carefully manage waste storage to avoid overflowing. Perhaps the most surprising logistical hurdle? Water. A 20-hour flight requires far more water than usual for toilets, galleys and hydration stations. The A350-1000 ULR carries additional water tanks, but even then, every drop has to be accounted for. Qantas has even optimized the water flow in the lavatories to reduce usage without compromising hygiene. Before committing billions to this project, Qantas ran 3 research flights on a Boeing 787-9 in 2019 and 2020, flying 19 plus hours non-stop, with around 40 to 50 crew, researchers and volunteers on board. No tickets were sold. Just EEG monitors strapped to pilots' heads, recording brain activity in real time for the entire flight, alongside blood tests, cognitive assessments and fatigue tracking. The results were not particularly reassuring. Pilot performance doesn't decline gradually over 20 hours like a slowly draining battery. It drops in waves, tied to circadian rhythm, meal timing and workload. A pilot may feel completely fine while their brain shows measurable impairment. That bears repeating. A pilot can feel relatively fine and still be significantly impaired with no way of actually knowing it themselves. The data showed that fatigue spikes were most pronounced between 2 to 5 AM body time, regardless of how long the pilot had actually been awake. The solution for Project Sunrise is 4 pilots per flight, working in 2 separate shifts, with a hidden crew rest compartment built in. It's not just a bunk, it's a fully enclosed space with soundproofing, temperature control, and even a small lavatory, designed to allow pilots to sleep deeply during their off-duty periods. Each pilot gets a minimum of 8 hours rest during the flight, with strict monitoring to ensure they're fit to return to the cockpit. Passengers get some help too. The composite fuselage of the A350 allows for a cabin pressure equivalent to around 6,000 feet, or 2,000 lower than the 8,000 feet typical on older metal aircraft. This means better oxygen levels, less dehydration, and less of that groggy feeling after landing. There's also a stretch zone between premium economy and economy, the first of its kind on any commercial aircraft, where passengers can stand, walk, and do light exercises to combat deep vein thrombosis and stiffness. The lighting system is another game changer. It simulates a slow sunrise and sunset, shifting colours and intensity to trick the brain into adjusting to the destination's time zone. Studies have shown this can reduce jet lag by up to 50% compared to traditional cabin lighting, and the meal timing is synchronized to reinforce that circadian shift. All of which sounds great, right up until you ask the one question nobody likes answering. If you're 11 hours from Sydney and still 9 hours from London, and a passenger has a medical emergency, where does the plane actually go? The honest answer is, there aren't many good options. Diversion airports capable of safely handling a fully loaded A350-1000 ULR along these routes are limited. For Sydney to London, the primary diversion options are Singapore, Beijing and Anchorage, but even these require careful fuel calculations. A sustained headwind could eat into fuel reserves that were calculated with minimal margin. Unlike a typical flight, which can absorb delays by burning extra fuel or making a stop, Project Sunrise operates at the absolute edge of its range. There's no slack, because slack costs fuel, fuel costs weight costs range, and everything about this flight is already pushing its limits. This is why crew training and fatigue regulations for flights this long are being written from scratch. Qantas has been working closely with CASA, Australia's aviation regulator, and EASA, Europe's regulator, to develop new protocols for ultra-long-haul operations. These include mandatory rest periods for crew, enhanced medical training for cabin crew including advanced first aid and telemedicine capabilities, and real-time fatigue monitoring using wearable devices and biometric feedback. Even the flight path itself is a logistical puzzle. For Sydney to London, the most direct route takes a northerly path, often over the North Pole, depending on wind patterns. Qantas has confirmed that this Arctic routing is the most efficient for the Sydney to London leg, as it takes advantage of the Earth's curvature and prevailing winds to minimise flight time and fuel burn. Qantas has simulated diversions in its planning, but until the aircraft is flying with passengers, the true test remains. Can the logistics hold up under real-world pressure? 12 aircraft, over $4.4 billion combined based on list prices, each one carrying just 238 passengers, with over 40% in premium cabins, because that's the only configuration that makes the fuel maths and the revenue maths balance at the same time. Singapore Airlines already runs something similar, an ultra-long-range A350-900 flying non-stop from Singapore to New York. So there is proof the ultra-long-haul concept can work commercially. But that route is shorter, 15,349 kilometers versus Sydney to London's 17,016. The aircraft has no economy cabin at all, and the margins are more forgiving. What Qantas is attempting is longer, tighter, and more exposed than anything currently flying. Right now, one aircraft has flown for under 4 hours. The second is in the paint shop. The delivery date has already slipped once, and sometime in April 2027, if everything goes to plan, a plane will leave Sydney, fly through a fake-engineered sunrise designed to trick 238 brains into thinking it's morning, swap pilots mid-flight, and land in London nearly a full day later, having never touched the ground in between. The plane can physically do it. That part is solved. What's still unknown is whether the people, the schedules, the spreadsheets, and the logistics can keep up with the plane. And that's the test nobody can run on the ground. It only happens once this thing is full of paying passengers, somewhere over the Indian Ocean at 3 AM, hours from home. Project Sunrise isn't just about flying further, it's about redefining what's possible in aviation logistics. Qantas has spent 9 years and over $4 billion building an aircraft that can stay in the sky for 20 hours. But the real challenges are the ones we don't even see. The diminishing fuel returns, the human bodies pushed to their absolute limits, the catering, the waste, the diversion logistics, things that passengers would never normally even think about. So that first test flight is now done. The launch date is locked in. But the biggest challenges are probably still ahead, proving that the people, the systems, and the business model can actually handle the strain. So I guess the question is this the future of long-haul travel, or is it a step too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories about the hidden logistics behind aviation's biggest bets, then hit subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from. Thanks so much, see you next time.